I used to think silence was peaceful, that when two people could sit together without speaking, it meant they understood each other completely. But over time, I learned that silence can also mean distance, a quiet wall that grows so slowly you hardly notice until it's too high to climb. My name is Grace. I was married to Michael for 26 years. We met when we were young, both too idealistic to imagine how life could change two people. He was calm, dependable, and kind. I was talkative, emotional, always trying to fill quiet spaces with words. Maybe that's why we balanced each other so well in the beginning. I remember our first home, a small rented apartment with cracked walls and a window that looked out over the street. We had only one good chair, and we used to take turns sitting on it after dinner. We laughed about it back then. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that felt like enough. Years later, when I walk through the big, silent house we built together, I sometimes think about that chair. Back then, silence was soft, full of shared dreams. Now it's just empty. The early days, Michael worked at an insurance firm. He was the type of man who believed in routine. Same breakfast every day, same route to work, same black shoes neatly placed by the door. I used to tease him about it. He'd smile, shake his head, and say, "You'll thank me one day when life gets messy." He was right in a way. Life did get messy, but I didn't thank him, because when life got messy, he disappeared into his quiet. In the first few years, I didn't notice it. We were busy. We had our son, Ethan, then our daughter, Sophie. I spent my days running around, cooking, cleaning, soothing cries, waiting up late for him to come home. He was always tired. I understood. He was working hard for us, providing, building a future. That's what I told myself every time he came home silent, eyes fixed on the floor. At night, I'd ask him about his day. He'd nod, say fine. I'd wait for more, but that was all. So, I'd fill the air with stories from the kids, little jokes, tiny victories. He'd listen with half a smile, but his eyes, they looked somewhere else. Small gaps, quiet nights. It's strange how love fades, not like a fire that dies suddenly, but like a candle burning lower each night. There's no single moment you can point to and say, that's when it ended. It's in the small moments, the dinners eaten in silence, the missed goodnights, the laughter that stops echoing. One evening, years later, I remember sitting across from him at the dining table. The kids had grown up and left home. It was just us again, two people who once couldn't stop talking, now struggling to find a single thing to say. I stirred my tea slowly, the spoon clinking softly against the cup. He was reading the newspaper. The sound of pages turning filled the air like whispers in a library. I wanted to say something, anything. Ask him about his day. Tell him about mine. But my voice stayed inside. It was easier not to speak. He looked up for a moment, met my eyes, then smiled faintly, that polite kind of smile you give to strangers. I smiled back. That was our conversation. When love turns into habit. People often say that marriage changes after the kids leave home. They're right. But it's not just emptiness, it's recognition. You suddenly realize how much of your relationship was built around noise. When the house falls quiet, you finally hear the silence between you. Michael and I started moving like shadows around each other. He'd wake up early, leave for a walk before I got out of bed. I'd make breakfast, leave his plate covered with foil, then go for errands. We shared space, but not presence. Some nights, I'd sit by the window and watch him through the reflection, sitting in his recliner, staring at the TV, not really watching. His face looked tired, older, softer in a way I didn't recognize. I used to reach for his hand on the couch. Now, my fingers stayed folded in my lap. It wasn't anger that kept us apart. It was habit. And habit, I learned, can be louder than any argument. There was no argument, no shouting, no slamming doors or cruel words. Just time, soft and steady, pulling us further apart. It started with small things. Michael stopped asking me to join him on his morning walks. At first, I told myself he wanted space. Maybe he needed quiet time before work. But one morning, I woke up early just to surprise him. He was already gone. The front door clicked softly behind him when he left, like he didn't want me to know. That sound stayed with me, the careful, almost secret sound of his leaving, the spaces in between. I tried to fill the silence with routines. I cleaned the house, rearranged shelves, cooked meals that would make the kitchen smell alive again. I called Sophie and Ethan more often just to hear familiar voices. Sophie always asked how Dad was. I'd say he's fine, just quiet. She'd pause and say, you two are so alike. But we weren't. Not anymore. In the evenings, I'd sit by the kitchen window with my cup of tea, watching the world outside. The neighbors laughing on their porch, the children playing on the street, the old couple walking hand in hand. Michael would come home around that time, always a little later than before. He'd nod when he walked past me, loosen his tie, and head straight to the living room. Sometimes I'd follow and sit beside him. The television would flicker across his face, but he rarely reacted to what was on. He didn't laugh at the jokes or comment on the news. He just sat there, still and silent. There were moments I wanted to ask, are you unhappy? But I didn't, because what if he said yes, remembering the warmth? Some nights, I would pull out old photo albums, our wedding pictures, Ethan's first day of school, Sophie holding her first trophy, all of us smiling, so alive, so sure of each other. I used to think photographs could hold love in place, like a pressed flower between pages. But when I looked at them now, I didn't feel warmth. I felt distance, as if I was watching strangers I once knew. I remember one evening when I tried to bring that warmth back. I cooked Michael's favorite meal, roasted chicken with herbs, the way his mother used to make it. The smell filled the house, and for a moment I felt hope. When he came home, I smiled and said, dinner's ready. He looked surprised, maybe even touched, but he didn't say much. He ate quietly, thanked me afterward, and went to his study. I stayed in the kitchen, looking at the 2 plates on the table. The candle I'd lit flickered against the window, reflecting 2 faces that didn't face each other anymore. Words left unsaid. Sometimes silence isn't peace, it's avoidance. There were things I wanted to talk about. Our future, the children, the emptiness I felt. But every time I tried, his quietness would stop me. He had that calmness that made you feel your emotions were too heavy, too loud. So I learned to carry them alone. One night I tried again. He was reading, glasses low on his nose. I said softly, do you ever feel like we've changed? He didn't look up. Everyone changes, he said. I mean us, I whispered. You and me. He nodded slowly, turned a page, and said, maybe we just got comfortable. And that was it. That was the whole conversation. Comfortable. It sounded safe, but it felt like loss. The distance we didn't see. When Ethan got engaged, Michael and I traveled together for the engagement dinner. It was the first time we'd been away from home in months. At the hotel, we sat side by side on the bed, scrolling through our phones in silence. I watched him type a message, probably to work, and wondered when I stopped being the person he wanted to talk to. At the dinner, people laughed, hugged, clinked glasses. Someone asked how long we'd been married. Michael smiled and said, 26 years. Everyone cheered. A woman at the table said, that's beautiful. You must still be so in love. I looked at him. He smiled politely and took a sip of water. And in that moment, I realized sometimes love doesn't die loudly. Sometimes it fades so quietly that only one person hears it go. The silence that followed us home. After we came back from Ethan's engagement, the silence felt heavier. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It had weight. It filled the hallways, pressed against the walls, followed us from room to room. One evening, I was folding laundry when Michael came in. He said, I'm going to start staying a little later at work. We got a new client. I nodded. Okay. He hesitated, then added, don't wait up for me. Something inside me sank, but I smiled. I won't. That night, I sat by the window until the clock struck midnight. When he came home, he was quiet, careful not to wake me, not knowing I was awake the whole time. I listened to him move through the house, shoes off, jacket hung, footsteps soft against the floor. And for the first time, I realized I didn't recognize the sound of my own husband anymore. The unspoken goodbye. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being unseen, from lying next to someone who no longer looks at you like you're theirs. We still said goodnight every evening. A simple word, a habit, but it felt like a door closing quietly between us. Sometimes I'd whisper, "Goodnight, Michael," and he'd answer, "Goodnight, Grace." And I'd stare at the ceiling, wondering when those two words stopped meaning "I love you." That's how the quiet grew, not overnight, but day by day, until one morning, I woke up and realized we hadn't really spoken, truly spoken in months, and I didn't know how to start anymore. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind where the sky looks tired and the air smells like rain. I was cleaning the living room, humming softly to myself. The house felt emptier than usual. Even the walls seemed to echo differently. Michael had left early that morning for work. He didn't kiss my forehead like he used to, just said, "Don't wait up." I nodded, pretending not to care. But as the door closed, I felt something inside me slip quietly out with him. The envelope. I was dusting the bookshelf when I found it. A white envelope, half tucked behind a photo frame. It wasn't hidden well, just placed carelessly, as if he'd meant to take it and forgot. I picked it up. It wasn't sealed. Inside was a folded sheet of paper. I hesitated, my hands trembling slightly, before opening it. It was a printed email. At the top, I saw a name I didn't recognize. Linda R. I started reading. "It was nice having coffee again, Michael. I've missed our talks. You always listen better than most people. Maybe next time, dinner? You pick the place. L." I stood there for a long time, just staring at those words. Dinner. Missed our talks. It wasn't proof of anything more than friendship, at least not on paper. But my heart knew what my mind refused to say. The silence between us suddenly made sense. It wasn't just distance. It was guilt, or maybe escape. I placed the paper back in the envelope and set it where I found it. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. Just hollow, like someone had gently removed a piece of me without leaving a mark. The night he came home, that evening, Michael came home later than usual. His shirt was wrinkled, and he smelled faintly of coffee and rain. He smiled, that same polite, distant smile. "Long day," he said softly. I nodded. I figured. We had dinner, chicken soup and bread. He ate quietly, his spoon clinking against the bowl. I watched him, searching for something in his eyes. Guilt, affection, anything real. But there was nothing. Just the same calm stillness that had filled our home for years. After dinner, I stood by the sink, washing dishes while he went upstairs. The sound of running water mixed with the sound of rain against the window. And in that blend of noise, I realized I was done searching for answers he'd never give. The silence was the answer. The day after, I didn't confront him. Not that night, not the next day, because I knew that if I asked, he'd say it wasn't what I thought. He'd look at me with those steady eyes and explain it away, calmly, rationally. And I'd nod, pretending to believe him, while knowing the truth in my bones. So instead, I did nothing. I woke up, made breakfast, packed his lunch like always. When he said goodbye, I smiled and said, "Have a good day." He smiled back, relieved, maybe. And that small look of relief told me everything I needed to know. The visit from Sophie. A few days later, Sophie came to visit. She noticed right away that something felt off. "Mom, you look tired," she said, touching my hand. I smiled. Just one of those weeks. She looked around the quiet house, then whispered, "You and Dad okay?" The question hung between us like smoke. I wanted to tell her everything, but I couldn't. Not because I wanted to protect him, but because saying it aloud would make it real. So I said, "We're fine. Just quieter these days." She squeezed my hand gently. "You and Dad always find your way. You've been through so much together." I smiled again, but the warmth didn't reach my heart. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure if there was a way back. The morning light. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The house was silent, that kind of deep silence that hums in your ears. I walked to the window and watched the sunrise paint the sky in pale gold. For a moment, I let myself imagine a different version of us. A version where Michael turned to me and said, "I've been distant, but I still love you." Where I'd reach for his hand and he'd take it without hesitation. where we really talk about everything we'd lost and everything we could still save. But that was a dream, and dreams don't survive morning light. I turned away from the window, wrapped my robe tighter, and made coffee for one. The breaking point. A week later, something small broke the stillness. Michael forgot his phone on the kitchen counter before leaving for work. It buzzed once, a message. The name on the screen was the same, Linda R. I stared at it. I didn't open it. I didn't have to, because the message preview said enough. Dinner tonight? Same place. I exhaled slowly, set the phone down, and sat at the table. For a long time, I just listened to the ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint rustle of wind outside. Every sound felt louder than his silence ever was. And I knew, truly knew, that something inside our marriage had already ended. The quiet goodbye. When he came home that evening, I was sitting by the window again, the same place I always waited. He smiled gently. You didn't have dinner? I shook my head. No appetite. He nodded, set down his bag, loosened his tie. I looked at him for a long moment and said softly, Michael, when did we stop talking to each other? He froze, halfway through unbuttoning his cuff. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came. And that silence was my answer. I smiled sadly, looked down, and whispered, It's okay. You don't have to explain. I understand. He looked at me then, and for the first time in years, there was emotion in his eyes. Not anger, not guilt, just sorrow. He walked closer as if to say something, then stopped. And in that moment, the space between us felt wider than ever. I turned away, pretending to fix the curtain. The tears came quietly, slipping down without sound. He stood there for a while, then whispered, I'm sorry. And I nodded, because I was too tired to ask what he was sorry for. That was the night I stopped waiting for words, because sometimes silence is the truest confession of all. The morning after that night, everything felt different. Not louder, not calmer, just different, as if something invisible had shifted in the air. Michael left for work early, like always, but when the door closed behind him, I didn't listen for his footsteps this time. I just sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around my cup of coffee, watching the steam rise and disappear. That's what our love had become. Something warm that eventually faded into nothing. The days after. The next few days passed quietly. Michael didn't mention our conversation, and neither did I. We lived like polite strangers, careful, respectful, distant. He still came home at the same time, still ate dinner at the same table. But there was no laughter, no shared stories, no eye contact that lingered long enough to feel real. I started noticing how routine our silence had become, how easily we slipped into it, like an old coat that no longer fit but still felt familiar. At first, I hated it. Then, slowly, I stopped feeling much at all. Rediscovering myself. One afternoon, I went into the attic to find an old blanket. While searching through boxes, I found something else, a sketchbook. It was mine from years ago. I used to draw when the kids were young. Flowers, faces, little corners of our home. I'd forgotten that part of me existed. I sat on the attic floor, flipping through the pages. Each drawing felt like a whisper from the woman I used to be. Carefree, hopeful, full of stories to tell. When had she disappeared? When had I stopped creating, stopped dreaming, stopped being? That night, I took out a pencil and began sketching again. Not people, not memories, just shapes, shadows, light. Something inside me stirred, fragile but alive. A house of two silences. Michael noticed, though he didn't say anything. Sometimes he'd walk past my little desk and glance at the sketches. He'd open his mouth, as if he wanted to comment, then stop. Once, I thought I heard him sigh softly before walking away. There was no anger between us, just quiet coexistence. We moved like two ghosts inhabiting the same walls, each respecting the other's space. He stopped explaining his late nights, and I stopped pretending to believe his excuses. One evening, while I was folding laundry, I found a dinner receipt in his pocket, 2 meals, 1 bottle of wine, the same date and time he'd said he was working late. I held it for a while, then placed it gently on his nightstand. No confrontation. He saw it the next morning. He looked at me across the room, eyes full of guilt and confusion, waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I just turned and went downstairs to make tea. Sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's a choice. The choice to stop fighting for someone who's already gone. The letter I never sent. That evening, I sat down and wrote him a letter. Not to accuse or demand, just to say what I couldn't speak aloud. Michael, I don't know when we lost each other. Maybe it was in all the days we stopped talking, the nights we stopped touching, the moments we pretended everything was fine. I still remember how you used to look at me, like I was the only person in the room. I don't blame you for not looking that way anymore. I just wish we'd been brave enough to say it sooner. That love can die quietly, and sometimes silence is how it leaves. I'll always be grateful for what we had, even if it didn't last forever. I folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer beside my bed. I never gave it to him. Some words aren't meant to be read, only released. Sophie's visit. A few weeks later, Sophie stopped by again. She hugged me tightly, as if she could feel the heaviness in my chest. "Mom," she said softly, "you've been quiet lately." I smiled faintly. "So has life." She looked at me for a long time, then asked, "Are you happy?" The question caught me off guard. I didn't know how to answer it. "I'm learning to be," I said finally. And it was true. It wasn't happiness I was chasing, it was peace. And peace doesn't always come from fixing what's broken. Sometimes it comes from letting it rest. A small gesture. One evening, Michael came home early, something he hadn't done in months. He walked into the kitchen where I was peeling apples. The smell of cinnamon filled the air. He hesitated before speaking. "Smells nice," he said quietly. "Apple pie," I replied, not looking up. He nodded, then said, "You used to bake that when the kids were little." I smiled faintly. "I remember." He lingered for a moment, then pulled out a chair. We sat together, side by side, not touching, not speaking, just existing. And for a second, I saw a flicker of the man I used to know. He didn't apologize. I didn't ask him to. Some things were too fragile to put into words. When the timer dinged, I took the pie out of the oven and cut 2 slices. We ate in silence, and somehow, that silence felt different, softer, less cold. Not love, not reconciliation, just an understanding that some bonds don't end, they simply change shape. A gentle acceptance. After that night, I began to notice small changes. Michael didn't stay out as late. He started taking his walks in the morning again. Sometimes he'd leave a note on the counter, breakfast ready or drive safe. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about her. We just existed, quietly, peacefully. And that was enough. I realized that not every story needs a perfect ending. Some love stories end not with goodbye, but with silence, the kind that teaches you who you are when no one's listening. The stillness within. One morning, months later, I sat on the porch with my coffee. The garden was full of light. Birds sang softly, wind moved through the trees. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years, stillness, but not loneliness. I looked through the open window where Michael was reading. He looked older, gentler. He glanced up and caught my eye. We smiled, a small, fragile smile. No words followed. None were needed. That moment wasn't about what we'd lost. It was about what remained: respect, history, quiet affection. And I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. It's been almost a year since that night. The night when everything finally fell silent between Michael and me. Sometimes I still catch myself listening for echoes of what we once were, the laughter, the arguments, the music that used to play on lazy Sunday mornings. But now, those memories feel softer. They don't ache the way they used to. They just exist, like the scent of rain after a long dry day. I've come to realize that silence isn't always emptiness. Sometimes, it's peace wearing a quiet disguise. The small things I started noticing. I've started paying attention to the little things again. The sound of the kettle whistling. The way sunlight touches the curtains in the morning. The way the clock ticks, steady, patient, never rushing. I spend most mornings sketching by the window. It's become my form of prayer, drawing the world as I see it now, simple, and honest. Sometimes I draw Michael sitting on the porch, reading. He doesn't know. I never show him. But in those lines and shades, I find a strange kind of forgiveness. Because even though we couldn't save our love, we didn't destroy it either. We just let it rest quietly between us where it belonged. A visit from Sophie. Sophie visits every weekend now. She says the house feels different, calmer, warmer. She helps me bake, helps me prune the roses, and sometimes just sits beside me in silence. One day, as we were sipping tea, she asked, "Mom, are you and Dad okay?" I smiled. "We're peaceful, Sophie." She looked at me confused. "Peaceful?" "Yes," I said softly. "Sometimes peace doesn't mean things went back to how they were. It just means we stopped hurting each other." She didn't say anything after that, but I saw the way her eyes softened, the way she finally understood. The photograph. A few nights ago, I found an old photograph buried in one of the drawers. It was from our wedding day, Michael holding my hand, both of us smiling like the world belonged to us. For a long time, I just stared at it. I thought of how young we were, how certain. We believed that love alone would be enough to carry us through everything. But life has a way of reshaping love. Not ending it, just changing its form. I placed the photograph back inside the drawer, carefully, as if it were something sacred. Because it was. It still is. That love, even though it changed, built the life I have now. The children, the home, the lessons, the strength. I wouldn't erase it, even if I could. Michael's words. A few mornings later, Michael came into the kitchen while I was preparing breakfast. He stood there for a moment, watching me. Then, quietly, he said, "Grace, thank you." I turned to him. "For what?" "For staying," he said softly, "even when it was hard." I didn't answer right away. There was a lump in my throat, and all the years we'd shared seemed to rise between us like mist. Finally, I said, "We both stayed, Michael, in our own ways." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening just a little, then sat down at the table. For the first time in a long while, we had breakfast together, not as lovers, not even as husband and wife trying to fix something, but as two people who had finally stopped fighting the past. The quiet understanding. That's the thing about life. It keeps moving, even when your heart wants to stay behind. At first, I feared that silence meant the end. But now I understand it's something else entirely. Silence can hold truth. It can hold respect. It can even hold love, the kind that no longer asks for anything in return. We still don't talk much, Michael and I. But when our hands brush while passing each other in the hallway, there's warmth there, faint but real. And that's enough. A letter to my younger self. Sometimes, at night, I write letters to the woman I used to be, the one who cried herself to sleep wondering what went wrong. If she could hear me now, I'd tell her this. You did not fail because love changed. You did not fail because silence grew between you. You grew. You learned that letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It just means you finally understand when to stop holding on. I'd tell her to forgive herself, to forgive him, to forgive the life that didn't turn out exactly as she planned, but still gave her moments of beauty in between. A peaceful afternoon. It's late afternoon now. The sun paints the room in gold, and the world feels soft again. I hear Michael's steady breathing from the porch as he reads his newspaper. The air smells like jasmine. Everything is still. And in that stillness, I feel a quiet joy, not loud, not overwhelming, just present. Like a calm sea after the storm. I've learned that love doesn't always need to be loud to be real. Sometimes it's found in the gentle rhythm of two people learning to coexist. In forgiveness unspoken, in silence that no longer hurts, in the soft look exchange between two hearts that finally understand. My final reflection. If someone were to ask me now what silence taught me, I'd say this. It taught me how to listen, not to words, but to hearts. It taught me that endings don't always mean loss. Sometimes they're beginnings in disguise. And it taught me that love, in its truest form, doesn't vanish. It transforms from passion to peace, from longing to understanding, from holding on to letting be. The silence between us was once the loudest pain of all. But now, it's the quiet that holds everything together. Not perfect, not broken, just human. And that is enough.